My name's Jeff Dennis, and I'm the entrepreneur in residence of Fasken, Martineau. We're one of Canada's largest law firms, and we have a practice dedicated to early stage innovation companies. And I'm pleased today to share with you my tips on presenting the perfect pitch. You can use this for the TiQuest business plan competition, or really for any other investor pitch. So how do you stand out in the crowd? You're going to be presenting to a room full of judges for this TiQuest competition. You might be giving your pitch to various investors from different walks of life. So how do you stand out in the crowd? I would start by telling a story where you illustrate the pain. The pain is that big problem in the market that you want to solve. And you want to tell an empathetic story so that your audience can really understand that pain and they get that big aha moment where they know that there's really a market for this and there's demand for what you have to offer. What I'm going to do now is really share with you what I think are the 10 or so slides that you should have as part of your presentation. The first slide is the cover slide. On the cover slide, you want to list your company name, your location, your name, your title, and a very short, brief description of what your business is. It's that statement that you use at cocktail parties to describe what you do. In my case, I'm the trusted advisor to the CEOs of fast growth companies. What's yours? The next slide gives a real overview of the company. You want to tell the audience first what you're going to tell them. Then your presentation, you tell them, and at the end, you tell them what you told them, so that they really understand what the purpose of the presentation is. They know what to anticipate as they're hearing you tell your story, and at the end you summarize it. You want to identify who your target market is. Is it B2B, B2C? How are you going to get there? And then you want to give them a brief outline of your status. Where are you? Are you in development? Have you launched? Do you have customers? Where are you in that growth cycle? The next slide talks about the pain in more detail. Give your audience a real understanding of that pain. What is the size of the problem, and who are your customers? Again, B2B, B2C, who are they? And help the audience understand that this is a real problem that needs to be solved. The next slide describes your solution to the pain. So what is your offering? What's your product or service? How do you fit in the value chain? Do you complement existing products, or are you disruptive? Do you replace them? Who is your customer? Is it a must-have solution or a nice-to-have solution? This is really important. You want to convince the audience that this is really an urgent thing that they've got to have to solve this big pain. Not that it's just some nice shiny bauble that would be nice to have. List the key benefits of your solution, and again, underscore who the key beneficiaries are. So what's unique about you? Do you have proprietary intellectual property? What other competitive advantages do you have? Summarize your product or service so that these advantages are really clear to the audience. The next slide addresses your competitive advantage. How do you compare against the competition? My suggestion is that you use a matrix showing the various competitors and you along the horizontal axis, and the features and benefits down the vertical axis. You want yours to all be check marks, and you want all of your competitors to be big X's. If you look at the next slide, it's an example of my presentation. You know, my presentation versus other presenters. If you notice, I clearly identified the pain. I gave a clear description of the solution. I convinced you that I have a must-have solution. I was articulate. I made eye contact. And I had understandable slides. And as you can see, none of my competitors had any of these things. This is a really clear way to tell your story. The next slide is about the go-to-market strategy. Do you have customers yet? If not, who are your target customers? And who are your strategic partners? This might be a good time to use some name brands to associate your product with, or service that is. If you're selling to customers that have market awareness, you want to link yourself to those customers. But you want to be truthful. Don't overstate things, don't mislead things. Make sure that you really do have those important relationships before you drop the names. The next slide talks about the business model. So how do you plan on making money? Explain your pricing, your costs, and the profitability. Be prepared to defend your key assumptions. I wouldn't do it in the presentation, but be ready for that during the Q&A portion. You'll probably be asked questions about sensitivity to some of those assumptions, so you may want to have some backup slides with some sensitivity analysis supporting your numbers. So the next slide describes your financial future, your projections. My suggestion here is that you use a graph, and you want to show that hockey stick result. But be sure that you share with them your key metrics: customers, unit sales, new products, new verticals. How are you going to get those numbers to that point? Be reasonable, be realistic. Don't use the word conservative. Everybody uses that word. Everybody's numbers are conservative. You want to persuade the audience that you're realistic and these are reasonable numbers. The next slide is all about the team. So now we've already persuaded the audience that you have a pain that you're addressing, you've got customers, there's a business model, you've got some competitive advantages, but now it's about execution. Do you have the team that's going to be able to drag this ball over the goal line? So at this point you want to identify the key players of the team, their track record, and their role in your business. If you have board of directors or advisory board or mentors, this would be a good time to share those names as well. If you have lawyers or accountants, be sure to put in a good word for us as well. The next slide summarizes your financial requirements. How much money do you need? Explain what you're going to do with that money and what milestones you're going to achieve with that money. This will help the investor and the audience understand what the objective is here and that you really understand what it takes to get to market. Be really clear, again, be realistic, and be prepared to defend the numbers. The last slide is your summary slide. As I said at the beginning, you want to tell them what you're going to say, you want to say it, and then you want to tell them what you said. Briefly, on this slide and during your presentation, summarize what you told them. There's this pain. You have a solution. You've got this special sauce, this competitive advantage. Who your competition is, what the business model is, the team, and how much money you need. This would also be a good time to restate that tagline. In my case, I'm the trusted advisor to the CEOs of fast growth companies. The next slide is really some tips on presentations. I think my first suggestion would be assume your audience has a grade 8 level of education. They could be the gifted class, but don't assume too much knowledge. Don't use lingo, and understand you've been living this day in, day out. This is all new to them. So without being disrespectful, dumb it down, let people really understand on a simple basis what we're talking about here. Again, use stories to describe that pain and the solution that you have for it. It's much easier to understand your product when you can describe it through an interesting story. Again, don't be afraid to drop names, but again, only if you have those relationships. Don't mislead or overstate. Stay within your time limit and be sure to leave time for Q&A. Use the word realistic, not conservative. Everybody's assumptions are conservative. You want to be seen as the person whose numbers are realistic. Don't rely too much on the slides. Make sure that people are listening to you. Your credibility is the key. If the slides are too busy or too distracting, you could lose your audience. A great book was written by Guy Kawasaki, The Art of the Start, in which he talks about the 10-20-30 rule. 10 slides, 20 minutes, 30 font. That's a good rule of thumb for your presentation. So this is my summary slide. This is what you want to get across to your audience. That you have a must-have solution to a big pain. That there's a large addressable market. That you have a competitive advantage over all the competition, that you have a viable business model, and that you have the team with the track record who can drag the ball over the goal line. If you can convince your audience of all these things, you'll get funded, and you might even win the TideQuest business plan competition. Good luck, and thank you.